Hi folks, so this is the next video in the series for Romans in the countryside. It's video number 4. We've looked at Cicero, Horace, Livy, and now we're going to look at Ovid. So we're kind of going broadly chronologically through them. Ovid's a poet and he's looking at a rustic festival. The festival we're going to look at in today's poem is called the Terminalia. Terminus is the god of boundaries, and we still use the word terminus today to mean the end of a route or the end of a line where something ends. So to help you draw these connections together for the extended essay question, I've put 3 prompts on the do now task. If you want to pause the video and have a go at these, do it now, and then I'll work through the answers with you. Okay, so this is a recap on the authors we've looked at so far. So how does Cicero present the contrast between country living and city living? The quote at the very end of the set text sums this up. He says that living in the countryside is the teacher of thrift and hard work, whereas the city prompts people to become avaricious or greedy. So avaritia is a key word that comes up there. And he's making that point because Rustic, who he's defending, has been accused of killing his father to inherit the estate. So Cicero is making the case that it's just not in the character of country people to do that at all. Okay. According to Livy, what does Cincinnatus do for Rome, and why is this special? So, according to Livy, Cincinnatus leaves his farm to go and fight for Rome and save them from the Sabines. This is really special because he actually returns to his farm afterwards. In the bit of the set text we looked at last, this was presented almost like a Marvel film, you know, when a superhero puts the suit on for the first time. You know, Cincinnatus drags himself away from some farming activity, and Livy's not sure whether he's digging a ditch or ploughing a field, but he's doing something very physical, very demanding, showing that he's strong. And he wipes off the grime of the farm and puts on the toga. So he's a very kind of rugged, heroic figure. He's not a very perfumed, delicate, urban sort of guy. He's a kind of rugged hero in the way that Livy describes him. And it's special because it shows that Cincinnatus isn't going for power for himself, he's not a politician. And that's something the Romans found really likeable about him. It's really similar actually to what Cicero says about country people. How does Horace describe the countryside? So we looked at 2 poems from Horace, okay? One of them was odes and the other one was epodes. It's more helpful for you to use the thematic title that the exam board have given them. So the pleasures of country living and the changing face of the countryside. So in the pleasures of country living, we compared Horace to the frescoes, the wall paintings, looking at how idealised and relaxing the countryside is as a place of rest and retreat for people far from business. And then we also looked at the changing face of the countryside. So when Horace is complaining about people building these huge mansions in the countryside, taking up farming land for pleasure gardens and pools. So Horace is a kind of city, a city man, if you like, who talks about the way people from the city enjoy the countryside. He's not really talking about people who already live there. And they are presented through all of the texts that we'll look at as 2 different kinds of people. There are rustic people from the countryside, good salt of the earth country folk, and then there are city people who are trying to enjoy the countryside, but are just a little bit out of place in their environment. It's a big theme that could come up for an essay question actually, and we'll look at that a bit more now. We look at Ovid. So if we look at Ovid's A Rustic Festival, his poem is called The Fasti and it's all about the Roman calendar and different Roman festivals. So this is about how the Romans would celebrate the Terminalia. Before we get stuck in, we should note that this is a really ancient Roman festival that they believe dated back to the time of Romulus and Remus, like the actual founders of Rome. So the whole poem fits the theme of celebrating the history and the past of Rome and Rome's rural origins. And we've seen that in the Cincinnatus story. We've seen it in Cicero's speech where he says that Rome has flourished from like tiny rural places. And we've seen it in Horace as well when he kind of romanticises having your own land in the countryside that's ancestral, that you've inherited. Excuse me guys, sorry. So if we look at this together, Termine, sive lapis, sive este fossus in agro. So sive is whether this, whether that. Whether you are a stone, lapis, or a post, de fossus in agro, fixed in the ground. Stipes, ab antiquis tu quoque numen habes. Okay. So he's talking about the god as an actual boundary marker. Honestly, it's like the god of fences, and it seems really, really strange to us, but a lot of Roman culture really revolved around who owned land, who was inheriting land, and who was trespassing on someone else's land, because land was a huge commodity for them, okay? Te duo diversa domini de parte coronant. Two landowners from opposite sides crown you with a wreath. Duo diversa, like two different, and domini is masters, and here we've got landowners as a translation. Coronant, crown you. Okay, so they would put garlands on their boundaries to celebrate the god of boundaries. Binaque certa tibi binaque liba ferunt. Offering to you a pair of garlands and a pair of sacrificial cakes. So here we've got a pair of pairs, we've got couplets, we've got binaque. So, and a pair, to add emphasis to the idea that he's getting two. And add emphasis to this sense of cooperation, like terminus is there to increase harmony. People respect one another's boundary, and therefore it's all quite harmonious. That's why we've got duo diversa, two different. Duo diversa domini, we've got alliteration that connects those ideas together. Two different landowners offering you a pair, binaque, and a pair. Arafit huc ignem cortofet rustica testo. An altar is created, arafit. Excuse me. The simple farmer's wife herself brings the fire. So here, rustica is the farmer's wife, and rusticus is a farmer. So the word rustic can be used to mean a person. It's not just a describing word. Okay. Sumptum de tepidis ipsa carana focis, in a cracked pot taken from the warm hearth. So here everything's very humble and very kind of homey. So everything seems to be not opulent, not very stylized, but very honest. Ligna senex minuit coniscaque construit arte. The old man chops sticks. Seems a bit weird. Senex is old man. Minuit chops, ligna is sticks, and methodically piles up the cut pieces. But he's making the point that everybody in the home and everybody in the family is involved in this. So it's kind of like, you know, Christmas cards with families all gathered around on them. It seems really odd to us to have this kind of festival, but everybody's involved and it's a very homey festival. Et solida ramos figere pugnat humo. Struggling to fix the branches in the hard earth. Okay, so they're putting some effort into it. Tum sico primas irrita cortique flamas. Then he kindles the first flames with some dry bark. This festival, by the way, would happen in February, so 23rd of February. So it is quite cold and quite a wintry scene, and it's one of their winter festivals. So it's a very kind of wholesome, homey festival that rural people would focus on. Stat puer e manibus lata canistra tenet. While the farmer's son, puer, stands, holding a broad basket. Lata canistra is the broad basket, and tene is holding manibus in his hands. Inde ubi ter fruges medios imiset in ignes. Next, inde, ubi imiset, when he has thrown the crops, the fruges, into the middle of the fire, medios ignes. And 3 times here is ter. Okay, so it's something that seems very ritualistic. It's very much like a ritual, and they're using their own harvest to do this. Poriget inquisos filia parva favos. The little daughter, filia parva, holds out some cut up honeycomb, which is surely like the best thing that they have in the house. So all of the offerings are very, very humble, but very important to the family, and that's because they're making everything themselves. They're very self-sufficient. We'll look at that again when we look at Virgil, the self-sufficient farmer, and Virgil idealises a guy who basically is just growing his own food at home. But it's giving an idea and an impression of people who are real country people who actually live there. Vina tenent ali, libanto singula flammis. Others hold various wines. One by one, these are offered. So singula is one by one. These are offered, libantor, as a libation to the flames flammis. So they're following a ritual process, but they're not sacrificing loads of cows like they would in the city. They're not making a huge offering because they don't have a lot to give. They're giving as much as they have. So it's the idea that they're very humble and very frugal. Think about Cicero saying that the countryside teaches like frugality. Spectant, so they watch. Et linguis candida terba favet. And the crowd dressed in white. So candida terba is the white crowd. Okay, and they're wearing white because it's a ritual festival, so it's like a pure colour for them to wear. Show support favet with their silence or their silent tongue, so linguis. That's where we get linguistics from. Spargito et caeso communis terminus agno. Spargito, it is sprinkled. So terminus is also sprinkled by both sides with a sacrificed lamb. So caeso agno. Agno over here is the lamb. Okay, so this is, when we say sprinkled, it's probably a blood offering here from the lamb. Nec queritor lactans cum sibi porca dato. Nor does he complain when he's given an unweaned piglet. So again, it's this idea that they're just giving what they have at the time. They can't always give the choicest animal or the best animal. Conveniunt celebranque dapes vicinia simplex. They all come together, conveniunt, this simple community, vicinia simplex, celebrating, celebrantque, your feast, and dapes is the feast. So vicinia gives us vicinity, so it's this idea of neighbours, them being a neighbourhood or a community, okay? So vicinia suggests a really close circle of people who live in the countryside permanently. When we look at other texts, we sometimes think about people who have holiday homes in the countryside, who go seasonally, and who don't actually really belong in the city. These are farmers, these are people who live and work in the countryside day on day. Et cantant laudes termine sancte tuas, and singing your praises, holy terminus. Okay, so it's quite a weird poem because it's really focused on Roman religion, which we don't look at loads and loads on this unit, but let's have a look at the themes we could draw out from it. So we could think about the qualities and the values of country people, so the idea of people in the countryside being more virtuous. Te duo diversa domini de parte coronant, so two landowners from opposite sides crown you with a wreath. You could say that links really with what Cicero says. He says that people in the countryside don't covet, they don't appetebant other people's property. Okay, they don't covet other people's fields, they respect those boundaries. They're not avaricious like people in the city. So you could talk about country values versus city values again. You could have a look here at the kind of people, the character of people in the countryside, and link it to Cincinnatus. So Ovid mentions the farmer's wife, Rustica, and we have the same thing with Cincinnatus's wife, who rushes into their cottage to help him. We have a similar thing here. We have a family scene. If you were asked to compare city Romans and country Romans, this would be really helpful. You could also think about the idea of people who live there permanently versus people who just kind of holiday in the countryside. It's a less obvious theme, but it could come up. This is the first year the essay questions have run, so I would really be prepared for some of the obvious hitters like city life versus country life, the country is a place of rest or the country is a place of hard work. They would be really obvious themes. But another thing we could look at if we look at the picture and we think back to Horace is the countryside a place that's humble, or is it actually a very developed kind of alternative to the city? Is it a place for holidays? So if you look at the country villa in this painting, is very, very extravagant, and it gives the impression that whoever owns it either holidays there or doesn't really do much work themselves. So you might be comparing humble people in the countryside to people who holiday there. Just a few ideas to keep you thinking. As ever, use your knowledge organisers, use your like mind maps to help you with that a little bit more. This is really just to get you familiar with the text. Okay.